Yang's recent interview with the Des Moines Register probably spells some really damn good news for Bernie Sanders in Iowa. Let's talk about it. So everybody know that Bernie Sanders has been killing it in Iowa, and although Andrew Yang has improved, the polls don't have him really getting above 5% of the state total. Now that's not to say that he won't get any delegates whatsoever, because I'm sure he's doing better in some precincts than others. But the question is inevitable, considering that you have to get at least 15% in a particular precinct or 15% overall to keep any of your delegates. So the question was asked to him, where do you believe your delegates will go? And he said something that if you were paying attention, you probably could have predicted by now, which is he wouldn't be surprised if they ended up with Bernie Sanders. And then he goes on to elaborate by saying there is a lot of overlap. In other words, a lot of his supporters still support Bernie Sanders. And if they didn't know who Bernie Sanders was, they do still support some of his platform, at least as compared to the other quote unquote top tier candidates that have a chance of running away with Iowa, which would probably include Joe Biden, and Warren would get some delegates, I think, but not anywhere close to being competition for Bernie and Joe Biden. So, that's where they're going to have to pick from. It's either walk out or go to Bernie Sanders. This is huge for a couple of reasons. Strategically, for Bernie, this puts him in a better position than he is really already in Iowa. Now, his RCP polling average is 24%, which is high as hell, considering that Biden is the closest at 20%. But even still, one Emerson poll has Bernie at 30% in Iowa already. Now, obviously, he's not going to get all 5% of Andrew Yang supporters, but a few Yang supporters here, a few Yang supporters there, Bernie Sanders could end up coming away with 6, 7, 8 more delegates total, which in the beginning doesn't seem like that much, or in the end it doesn't seem like that much, I should say. But in the beginning, where momentum drastically influences how these other candidates will move, and if they're going to continue to get financial support from their corporate backers, it's a big deal. Those 8 delegates could be a big deal in the long run. I should also say this, because I felt like there are a lot of Bernie supporters who have been a little bit harsh towards Andrew Yang, and I've said this for quite some time, and I don't think they've been fair to him. I know that they don't agree with everything he says. I know they don't agree with him. They might think the federal jobs guarantee is better than UBI, which I'm actually in the camp that we need both, and there's no need to attack one or the other. In fact, we should be encouraging them and pushing them to push both. And then the detail tax, but that isn't a guarantee. And Bernie can say how he wants to do federal jobs guarantee, but that isn't a guarantee. So the details will get hammered out through Congress, but we really need both policies, in my humble opinion. Yang is also he's really bad on foreign policy, but I mean, Bernie isn't the best on foreign policy either. But just because you disagree with Yang here or disagree with Yang there doesn't mean he's a bad person. It doesn't mean he's a crypto fascist. It doesn't mean, he's a Trojan horse, right? I think that we have this issue on the left where if someone disagrees with us, that automatically makes them an enemy or an adversary of the movement in your eyes, which is ludicrous. That's not how real life works. All right, you disagree with some pretty crusty people in your real life relationships every day and don't ever cut them off or consider them an enemy to your family, right? No, that's not how it works. I understand why we're so touchy about the subject, but just because you disagree with somebody does not make them an adversary or an enemy. And by the way, just because you agree with somebody one time or 2 times, or they know exactly what to say, doesn't mean that they're a friend, right? For example, Donald Trump says some pretty funny and hilariously true things about Hillary Clinton. That doesn't mean I consider Donald Trump an ally. Hillary Clinton might say something hilariously true about Donald Trump. Actually, most times she doesn't really say anything true about Trump, which is kind of weird. She doesn't really, like, there's a bunch of true things you could say about Trump, but calling him a Putin accent, that doesn't work. So, but if she did say something true about Trump, that doesn't mean I would automatically call Hillary Clinton an ally, right? We have to look at patterns of behavior. That's like the biggest indicator of whether somebody is an ally, and it's the biggest indicator of what their actions are likely to be in the future once they get said influence, that they're voted for Bernie and that Bernie was cheated. He made it very clear to say that regularly. He's also stood up to CNN, MSNBC. He didn't let them attack him and roll over. Whenever his microphone was cut during the debates, any other candidate would have been quiet about that. And if you couldn't have known unless a candidate told you, or if you were at the event. I knew that was happening because I was at the debates here in Miami. So just because I disagree with Yang on some issues, that doesn't mean I'm like, screw Andrew Yang. He's an enemy. He's a crypto. No, it just means I disagree with Andrew Yang on some issues. Look at his patterns. Has he always been right? As far as his his policy advocacy. And by the way, if you look at his domestic policy, when you think about things like the what he said, the democracy dollars and things like that, and UBI, just as a general concept, even if you disagree with his version of it, those are great policies. And he actually has one of them. Andrew Yang is a genuine guy, and he could have easily signaled his supporters in that interview to go to Joe Biden easily. People don't think that that's how it works, but I'm telling you, if that was Elizabeth Warren, for example, you know what her answer would be? If that was, or she would have said, well, a lot of them, they like their establishment and or not their establishment, but they like Joe Biden, or, they like so-and-so, but she wouldn't have said to recognize that just because we disagree with somebody does not make them our enemy. At the end of the day, if we have an election that's between Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, and Tulsi Gabbard, at the end of it, if we have a debate that is Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, and Bernie Sanders, that we should count ourselves blessed. That is a true testament to how far this country has come in just 3 years, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope you all understand this. You might want your preferred candidate to win. I know I want Tulsi to win for my own reason. I know that Yang wants his people to win, or Yang people want him to win for their own reasons, and the same thing with Bernie Sanders. That's fine. It doesn't mean you attack someone's integrity. It doesn't mean you break down their character. If you can't break down the policy respectfully, you can't have respect that you supposedly disagree with. That's usually what it is. And if you have to lie about them, like I have my issue with Andrew Yang's policy is mostly just the VAT. He's actually improved greatly. He's a leader. Does that mean I still agree with it holistically? No, but I also know I can't always get everything I want. So we just should be very careful. If you're one of the ones telling Yang to drop out, I've talked about this before. If you're one of the ones telling Yang to drop out, telling him, democracy be damned, do what we tell you to do, you're wrong. That's not right. You're wrong for that. For a lot of reasons. If you're one of the ones telling Tulsi to drop out, same thing. Telling Bernie to drop out because of his age or whatever, same thing. You're wrong. Especially when you're telling the allies that you need. So you want one person to try and take on this behemoth of an establishment? Or do you want all of us to take it on together? What do you think? Like, share the video, comment below. And more than anything else, ladies and gentlemen,